What's up, Otakus? It's your tour guide here, and I'm getting kind of a late start. My apologies. It's been a long week, and lots of things going on. The weather's getting better, and my son, he's starting a weekend program, so now his Saturdays are going to be kind of full with academics. I mean, it's like I think my wife and I disagree a little bit on, but it's important. I do realize the importance of it. Um, he's doing like a Japanese language program, and without that, he's not going to get any foundational knowledge of learning kanji, which are essentially like Chinese characters, and it's the Japanese form of Chinese characters, um, really foundational to the language. And you just got to start that education very young. They have a very good, you know, system of education, so where kids can kind of pick it up, and you know, when they're young, they just absorb all that, and it's as long as they maintain, good amount of reading and all that, it should carry on through, the rest of their adult lives. So yeah, I do realize the importance of it, but it also is just very. Oh, I mean, he's going to be having 5 days a, a week of school, and then on top of the supplemental weekend program, Saturdays. His Saturdays are pretty much, gone. So we're gonna try to, like, I don't know. I feel there should be like a happy balance between, you know all the school. He shouldn't have to be in school constantly, but um, I don't know. Just kind of have mixed feelings about it. But for now, we're gonna, commit to the program, and um, we do feel it is a priority that he learns that, and we'll just see how he deals with it. Hopefully, he sees the importance of it. It won't be easy, but we just need to have him. We just need to make it fun for him. Hopefully, he'll take to being in the. I mean, all his friends are going to be. Well, most of his friends are going to be in the program with him anyway from preschool. So it's gonna. At least he'll be able to see his friends and hang out with them, and hopefully they'll build a nice, um, like a group of friends that will want to hang out with each other on the weekends and stuff. So it is what it is. What are we going to talk about today? Yes. Well, we are going to talk about um, a lot of things. I guess I should just kind of lay out the agenda here. Um, First off, I want to just, pay tribute to um, one of the, you know, uh, most beloved actors of my generation, um, Val Kilmer, who passed away. I believe it was earlier this week. And he passed away from pneumonia. Of all the things he's been kind of, he was battling cancer, and he kind of recovered from that, was making a recovery from that. but it did take a toll on his, physical health. I don't know if that contributed to the bout with pneumonia that took his life, but um, it's just very tragic. He was what, 65 when he passed. Really uh, too young and too soon um, to have passed. But what I appreciate about his career is he's first off, he's been in some incredible movies. He's given some incredible performances. But yeah, one of my favorite moments from Top Gun was the scene with him and Tom Cruise. Like them reuniting on screen, and Val was one of the top uh, admirals in the Navy. I think he was like the head of the Navy, right? He was like uh, the the top admiral there, and then he passes away in that, and so we kind of get this like farewell to the Iceman character, um, and then now we actually do say farewell to Val Kilmer, so it just it's just one of those weird feelings because like you felt that sense of loss in that movie, and now you're feeling the same sense of loss, and that's how you know brilliant that his performance was. um, I mean, who didn't love Iceman in Top Gun, right? He was technically the guy we were supposed to hate, but you had your two camps. You had your Iceman camp, or you had your Maverick camp, and um, definitely Val Kilmer was, in terms of his on-screen charisma and good looks, and I mean, he was a scene stealer from Cruise. Um, they were definitely the top stars of that movie. Um, yeah, it's some of my. I mean, my favorite movie by Val Kilmer is Heat, Michael Mann's Heat, and he played Chris. And there's another great scene at the end of that film where Chris comes back to his estranged wife, and she comes out on the, I guess, the veranda or balcony, and she gives him this simple like signal, like it's not clear, right? It's um, get out of here, and it's just such an emotional scene. You see the pain in his eyes, but also the realization, well, okay, and then it really, as many issues as their marriage has, it does show that it was there's a layer of love and you know trust and love there. Um, so yeah, it was just that movie had just so many great performances. I mean, that's just an A list of stars in that movie, and yeah, I mean, talk about from the first scene to the last scene, just absolutely absorbing. Um, and then of course Tombstone, right? Tombstone, where he plays Doc Holliday. Um, and man, is that character just boy? I mean, he really carries that movie. Val Kilmer carries that movie hands down. Um, and you instantly feel a connection with that character. I think that's what Val Kilmer is best at. He's just has this like on-screen charisma that you, even if he's playing like a bad guy and an antagonist, it's you have this, not this loathing or hatred, but just sort of this like, oh, yeah, that guy, um, like you're drawn to the character, even though um, he's not, the main character. So um, yeah, I'm just appreciating his career and all the joy he's brought. And of course, he's been in so many good movies like Willow. Um, a lot of people are saying, Real Genius, that's one of his early works, um, which was good as well. A lot of people point to Batman. I did not. I mean, I didn't hate that Batman, but I didn't like. Um, wasn't my favorite of the Batmans. I think the Keaton Batmans were, because it established, you were kind of like, here's the Keaton Batman, and you had that for two Batmans, and then suddenly you change it. It's not always going to be a good transition, but Val did play very good. I think he played a better Bruce Wayne than Keaton did. Um, but they're in terms of the movie itself, I think the Keaton, um, there's something about that continuity that was better. Um, so yeah, we're dealing with that loss, and then um, I think it's kind of uh, talking about Batman, the Keaton Batman, and that's kind of what we're going to cover. Batman in around that period of the Michael, or I should say the right the oh man, the director's name is escaping me now. Tim Burton. Tim Burton's Batman with Jack Nicholson as Joker and Michael Keaton as Batman. Um, that movie came out in 1989, the summer of 1989, and there was a lot of hype around that movie being built, um, and you just started seeing a lot of kind of interest in Batman comic books, and there were a lot of good Batman comic books coming out right prior to the movie release. So we're talking about 87, 88 through 89 and 90, just, a real smorgasbord of Batman content. But we're going to take you back. I'm going to introduce the song now. We're taking you back to March of 1988. And the number one song, or one of the top songs in all right, so that was Father Figure by George Michael, if you didn't hear it. And the comic book we are kind of, I guess, featuring today is Killing Joke um, by Alan Moore. And now I was, what, in 8th grade when I read this book. And I was reading it in my room alone. And this is my signed copy, by the way. Brian Ballin signed copy, first print. This is not my original book. This is a book I got this past summer or summer of 24. Um, and I absolutely love this book. But yeah, let's get into this book. I mean, first off, it's the origin of Joker. It runs parallel to um, sort of a current storyline and his origin. But he escapes Arkham, and he has a very specific plan around um, targeting the people close to the people close to Batman. Um, he kidnaps Barbara Gordon, uh, tortures her, and then eventually captures uh, Commissioner Gordon and forces him to watch. And it also goes back to his origins where, he's this, he's forced to, do things against, like, take part in like a crime against his will because his family needs the money. And then something, things go awry and he gets into this accident being exposed to chemicals. And that's what turns him into this uh, maniac, right? Um, so it just kind of paints this really dark picture of how he came to be, um, and it also just, yeah, I mean, it really goes down. Um, the artwork is just creepy. First of all, Brian Boland does this brilliant, creepy artwork throughout the book. There are these just like weird, like demonic looking, like little, they're like children, I guess. Like they're just like, I guess, um, little people that are just like misshapen or something. And it's just, there's just a lot of weird imagery in it. And there's a lot of sort of psychological terror that goes on. So I was reading this book as a kid, and mind you, I think I was too young as an eighth grader. I think I was just too young. I understood what was going on. It's not like I was too young to understand what was going on. I was just too young to really uh, kind of deal with the trauma from what I was seeing and what was happening. Right. So it was like it's kind of like whoa. Um, but then I read it again. And I read it again. I kind of read it several times. Um, but it was one of those like books you that traumatizes you. In fact, I haven't I I read it a couple times when I was like young, and then you kind of get like traumatized by it, and then you don't want to really read the book. You kind of don't want to like open it up and like revisit those like emotions. And the thing is, like when you're reading it, you like read it, and then you like, oh, I want to read it again. I want to read it again. But then after some point, like you're just like, yeah, I don't like. I just don't want to read it. It's kind of like revisiting those bad memories. But yeah, I think I was a little bit traumatized by the whole ordeal. And let's see if anybody's in the chat. Hey, Tyler Smith, what's up, man? Yeah, Brian Boland is amazing. How you doing, man? Thanks for joining. So, yeah, as I was saying, like, I was kind of traumatized by it, and I think, you know, initially it's what turned me off to Brian Boland's art. like I never associated Brian Boland's art with greatness because I think I just for too long um, kept him in that like his art is creepy. His art is just like eerie and creepy. Like I never took the time to appreciate like how talented the guy was. But it was always kind of like, oh yeah, he's the Judge Dredd guy. He's the guy who did, Killing Joke, and not a big fan of his art. That just kind of, it's like I was more into like, give me Tom McFarlane, give me Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, that kind of thing, and then I never associated Brian Bolland's name with like my favorites of in terms of comic book collecting. Yeah, Camelot 3000. Yeah, a lot of great artwork there as well. Okay, cool. Yeah, I never read that when that was coming out, but I know. I mean, I have issues of it now. I've heard good things about it. So yeah, but definitely now that when I got back into comic book collecting, and I just kind of I just was taking, looking at Brian Bolland's works again, especially the focus on Killing Joke, and then something just struck me like, man, this guy is incredibly like talented. Like his style is just unmatched in terms of the detail he puts into the characters and all the brilliant just line work, the shading, and I mean it's just masterful. I doubt anybody can really. I mean, just take a look at this cover, right? It's just like, just how brilliant is that? And he also knows how to just capture the macabre. That's a really hard thing to do as an artist. You can draw like caped people flying and doing action things, but to really draw like, things that'll creep people out, right? Things like just drawing like weird shit, like that's just a hard thing to. You just can't, train your mind to go into those depths, right? It's like it either comes out of your mind like this is what it should look like, or this is what. I mean, maybe had some sources of inspiration, but the way he does it throughout the panels of that book, and like he came up with all that stuff. Um, I'm sure in conversations with Alan Moore, but he had to actually bring it to life, and man, was it just brilliant. I have it signed by Bolland. Yeah, I have it signed by Bolland. I'd love to get more stuff signed by him, um, but he lives over in the UK, so it's really hard. I love his Jack of Fables covers. Yes. Um, in fact, like I was saying, like um, I would love to collect more Bolland, but he's got such a voluminous. I mean, you talk about people who have like just um, volumes of like work, cover work specifically. I think Raf covered recently the top bronze or the top Marvel cover artists, and he landed on like Gil Kane because Gil Kane had this just huge body of work where he was just putting out. It seemed like every cover Marvel was doing, and really Kane's brilliance comes from being able to, because every comic book, right? When you have somebody working on it, it it kind of takes a life and style of its own. Like Thor has a very like Thor type look to it. That's different from like Submariner, for example, right? Or different from um, the X-Men, or different from the Fantastic Four. But Kane was a person who could come in and just kind of fool readers into like thinking, oh yeah, this is like Dave Cockrum, or this is John Romita, or this is Jack Kirby. He just had this like kind of chameleon like comic book style that could just really sort of, but it was his own too. But he could mask his own style to kind of mimic the the artistry of other artists, and so that takes true talent for you to be able to like seamlessly kind of fit into whatever the title or the style of that comic book was, um, to just kind of be able to create covers and works for it, and not have people be dumbfounded that, oh, this is not the artist I'm used to looking at every month to month. He just kind of seamlessly did that. Well, Ballin was a little different. Ballin had volumes and volumes of work, but he definitely had his style and stamp and look to a comic book cover. And I love Ballin's Batman. Love Ballin's Wonder Woman, Superman. He just brings his own like take on characters, kind of like Alex Ross does, right? You, the Ross style is unmistakable, uh, and I think Ballin, again, he has his own style. It's just a lot of brilliant, again, line work. Um, and Ballin's a guy, he doesn't have an inker. He inks himself, so that's why you have that consistent style throughout his artwork. Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Ooh, no, I have not. I do have one of his like it's just like one of his like DC artwork books. It's like an art book with just a bunch of his I think, yeah, works from like The Killing Joke and other works throughout DC. But it's like a DC kind of art book. But the Joker artist edition, wow. Or the Killing Joke artist, that would be so it's a whole book in like an artist edition style. Wow, that may be something worth getting. Um, yeah, thanks for the heads up there. But yeah, that's the book, and this book was like extreme. I mean, nothing says a book's popularity like the number of printings. I think this is on its like 18th printing or something like that. Um, it's still a fan favorite to this day. It's just a one-shot story, but man, does it pack a punch. And I don't think I don't think I've read a Joker story that's as kind of demented and disturbing as this one. It's definitely the probably the best Joker story. I know that people point to the Neil Adams Batman. Is it 237? I want to say it's 327. That's the Joker cover, right? The Neil Adams Joker cover. A lot of people point to that one as like the beginning of like sadistic Joker, right? Or when they bring back his kind of sort of homicidal, sadistic side. But I mean that that one takes the cake in terms of just again, just portraying him as this, yeah, just this like lunatic, homicidal, a psychopathic lunatic, essentially. Um, and then that this book comes out, and then you know, in stride, Jack Nicholson plays the Joker, and I don't know if Jack Nicholson read The Killing Joke while he was preparing for the role, or I guess he was filming the role. I doubt Nicholson would have read a comic book um, for his portrayal of Joker. But yeah, Jack Nicholson played a great Joker. He played it like in his way, um, but it was kind of like Jack Nicholson playing, like a more sadistic version of the uh, Caesar Romero Joker, right? The Caesar Romero Joker was just this like goofball, like like didn't really wasn't really he's more of like a clown than he was like a criminal, right? And I think Jack kind of took the essence of the Romero character, but said, "I'm going to play him, straight up like crazy and dangerous." And yeah, brilliant performance by Jack. But I never, I don't know, I just, because I already had, for me, Batman 1989 did not fail as a movie. It definitely was an entertaining movie. It was a big box office hit. I mean that's as big as blockbusters get up to that point, right? And I enjoyed it. Definitely, like, it's weird because that when that movie came out, Batman was like reruns of the '60s Batman that just started playing on TV. I don't know if you remember that, but it's like they're playing the Burt Ward, Adam West Batman in syndication at that time. So I was watching that, um, and it was just Batmania. Everything was Batman. And of course, they were coming out with crossovers like Batman versus Predator, Batman versus the Grendel. Um, I mean, he was everywhere. Yeah, same bad time, same bad channel. I love the '60s Batman, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I love that era of Batman. I just wish I had grown up in that period, which was the late '60s, um, just to get a sense of, you know, how popular that character was back then, in the Silver Age comic books and stuff. But yeah, just good times watching that. And people don't. I guess people do realize it, but Bruce Lee played Kato in the early seasons of Batman. Um, Green Hornet psych. So Green Hornet was like part of this whole that universe, and Kato comes in and he's beaten up. Bruce Lee's beaten up like villains and stuff. That was just so cool. And, yeah, I think they got to bring back the '60s show, and I know you can watch it, like, I'm sure on like somewhere on some streaming channel, but it'd be nice to like have them. Maybe I should just go get the DVD or something. But just the whole tenor of that series is just hilarious. It's kind of like Burt Ward going, "Oh," it's like, and then Adam West playing the calm, like, "Hey, Robin, don't jump to conclusion." Like, it was just a very different, you know, not the traumatic, you know, character that is portrayed in the comic books, but this sort of like like seriously, like a debonair, like rich dude, just who just kind of go-go dances and parades around in tights. It was pretty hilarious. Uh, yeah, Biff Pow, right? Those great fight scenes with the graphics and stuff, the sound effects. It was just all real fun, and again, a great cast of characters as well. Um, they have like the likes of Burgess Meredith, and just a great cast of characters there. Um, so yeah, again, Batmania was just a huge. It had a lot to the success of that film had a lot to do with the I think the comic boom itself, right? Um, People like to think like, oh yeah, Marvel was what was driving comic book sales, and that's not true. Um, DC again with the Batman sales. I think Batman overshadows what was going on at DC just because it was just so big, right? But yeah, definitely in terms of DC, like the focus was on Batman, but DC was doing well in that late '80s period too. People forget like that's when that great Justice League run was happening. Um, it was the post-crisis kind of reboot that was going on around this period as well. So you had Perez Wonder Woman, you had John Byrne on Superman, right? You had a lot of interesting things going on with the Flash and Green Lantern. Um, and then it kind of coalesced into the 90s where you had, again, kind of a reboot, uh, not a reboot, but sort of like you had a reboot with Aquaman, but you had sort of just these characters, new characters um, transitioning within their runs, right? They're just dealing with new situations and new things. So it was just a constant. Uh, it went from introducing this new timeline to like now they were transitioning and dealing with different situations. Um, but I think it was a sign of like, yeah, DC was trying to just find its footing. Like they were putting things out there, finding, hey, this doesn't seem to be working. Let's kind of change things around. And, uh, you know, it just felt like they're trying to reinvigorate interest around because they were losing. Yeah, DC was losing pretty badly to Marvel, and it didn't help when Image came around, and all the folk. Even Marvel was just like losing to Image at that point, right? But it was like Marvel and DC. And Marvel was like kind of beating DC, and then here comes Image, and then DC just kind of like stumbles even more. Un- Up until the Death of Superman arc, right? The Death of Superman arc, uh, you have this like all this interest built around comic books now, right? And here comes the Death of Superman, and I think I think the Death of Superman really popped the bubble for the the hobby because up to that point it was just like you had this massive readership. You had just all kinds of titles being produced. So you had people just buying going to the LCS and just picking up books and buying this and that. And of course, Marvel and Image sales were very, very robust. But a lot of factors led to that bubble bursting. Um, w- One of the main ones was Image had all these people buy into these like new titles, new characters and stories, and they were very exciting. But 5, 6 issues in, it just turned into this like huge, colossal crossover event, and you had to like literally buy like 10 or 20 books just to keep up with what was going on and keep up with all the characters and all that. And the stories themselves didn't have much substance. Like it wasn't well thought out. It was just like let's mash these teams together and have them fight. Or they had cool origin stories and all that, but at the end of the day, you got to like fight somebody um, and have it mean something, and that's where I think it fell apart for Image. So people are just like, man, this is trash, and they stopped wanting. I mean, outside of the first couple collectors editions, they weren't buying issues, 8 on, um, and that really hurt Image as a business because sales dropped off. The second piece of that, again, DC, you just didn't have really coherency in any of the titles that were running. Um, they had really changed things so much that it was just like it's kind of like Image, right? You just kind of have to have some kind of something to come back to each week or month to buy the comic book, but it's just like one new number one edition or some milestone edition that started this new arc. And if it couldn't sustain your interest, it really didn't go anywhere. And again, the death of Superman was a huge, big deal. A lot of people got into that. A lot of people started buying. A lot of people thought, yeah, this is my 401k, right? Um, and they really marketed and milked it, even though there were just all these copies produced. And I think that was the really the event that kind of like made people realize, like, man, you know, is this, I got this book, but is it really going to be worth anything? Because, I don't really want to buy anything outside of this little series run. Um, and the writing was on the wall. Why are you paying $2,000 when there's like a million copies of that um, out there? In fact, it's the second best-selling comic book outside of Jim Lee's, you know, X-Men run. So, yeah, I think by the mid '90s, people just had fatigue, comic book fatigue, and um, no one wanted to. You have to think the readership just fell off because they were reading this and they're like, okay, let me read the next issue, and it couldn't sustain itself. It just you lost interest in where it was going, and you have to sometimes resolve arcs. You have to sometimes close them out, resolve them, and say this is the end. And there was very little of that going on in comic books. It was just like one sort of it ends, but then it ends on a cliffhanger, and you have to buy. It's like you just get tired of that motif. Right, just a lot of transitions, and I think people just sort of just uh, weren't invested in any one character, and you got to have at least one character. I think Batman was that character, but Batman was never integrated into these other titles, and I think that was the mistake, right? It's like, and even Batman during this period, it's like they injured him, and then he kind of goes into the shadows, and They have Azrael take the mantle of Batman, and there's just a lot of just weird things going on there too. So it was just never, again, as if I think as a, even if you're like a hardcore long time comic book fan, you're reading this stuff and being like, come on, really? Like, you got to change his character. You got to like make all these changes to bring in new readership, or I don't know what the logic was, to be honest. Like, just seems like a lot of dumb marketing ploys to get people to excited about the title. But yeah, right. It was just kind of, you just kind of got tired by of the formula. The formula was working good, right, toward the beginning, but again, it's like you get, the thing about a formula is like when you constantly go to that well, people get tired of it. You got to kind of innovate and do new things with. I shouldn't say new things. You got to kind of like really build something thoughtful, and something that people haven't seen, people haven't read, something new about the character other than just introducing a new character, right? Just like giving him like some kind of, oddball origin story, and then just, you know, placing him in like a situation where you can introduce new bad characters. Like, that's formulaic versus like bringing a new character that is completely like, oh wow, yeah, this is something we've never seen before. Um, and being compelling because it's thoughtful, right? It's like something about the story or something about the character really has a connection with you, you know. So it's, I think, if you look at the IP that survived through that, I mean, it's just a mess of stuff happening in the '90s. But if you look at the IP that survived, um, you definitely have to look at Spawn. Spawn was kind of, I think Spawn was just one of those things. It didn't have all those crossovers. It was a really well thought out story, innovative. Um, Definitely the art was incredible. McFarlane and then Capullo. And yeah, I think anytime you have, I think Todd had his heart in that character. Anytime you have somebody who's has their heart, where they're just giving every creative ounce uh, to a title and character, and making sure it's that the story week to week is something that people want to come back and explore, um, that will maintain a fandom. But some of these other, specifically looking at a lot of the image stuff like Young Blood, and even the Wildcats to a certain degree. I think Wildcats did have good stories, but um, it kind of got lost in all the crossover stuff, and there were just too many like different storylines to follow in some of those crossovers. So it just became kind of this like, wait, when you confuse people and you can't keep up, it's like it's hard to start over, right? It's hard to start over. So it got to a point where you're just like, what happened in that issue that led to this, that led to that? And who are we fighting again? It just kind of became one of those things like just too much to keep up with. So yeah, the '90s. I wish I could say that the '90s had a lot of good content, uh, but in all honesty, I think the 90s, I love 90s books, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's all bad, but a majority of it, it really is not great quality. Kind of like the whole concept of mass printing and getting books out. I think that was more important than really thinking things through, right? Like, um, they always say, like, um, you know, quantity over quality. And what we had was a lot of quantity in the 90s and not a lot of quality, um, because they really skimped on everything in the 90s. Like, well, I shouldn't say everything because Image did bring the quality of the comic books. It raised the bar. Um, but, again, they were, you had a couple really established artists, but they were using a lot of like kind of up and coming artists. And these are guys were just like not a lot of comic book experience, um, and they were kind of being put in these studios led by guys who also didn't have a lot of comic book experience, right? Not a lot of publishing experience, I should say. They have a lot of experience working in the in the what's the word I'm looking for, in the trenches, but not a lot of you know uh, experience um, with the whole business of the comic book, so the industry. And I think that's ultimately what kind of, and then once Image fell, um, not to say Image fell, but like just people just the amount of money that the industry generated just fell off, right? Sales fell off. It the bubble burst, and so the reason that happened was exactly what we kind of outlined. It just a lot of quantity over quality, and people just lost interest. I being one of those people, like I remember distinctly, like my last comic book I purchased in '97, and I just that was like I graduated college that year, or I graduated college in '96, but I was starting to work, so by '96 I was kind of out. I wasn't buying anything. I was reading the occasional book here and there. And just remember when '97 I read my last comic book was Onslaught. You know, some of the books from the Onslaught series, and then didn't really touch. Well, I shouldn't say didn't really touch, but I would, get a read a comic book here, read a comic book there for the next, you know, 20 some odd years before I jumped back in. So yeah, it was a long hiatus, and not to say I didn't enjoy my comic book collecting days, but when I look back on, and that's the thing, like that's the thing about this hobby, it's a lot of it is nostalgia. So you're nostalgic for all the things you read as a kid, and let's be honest, a lot of the stuff we read and consumed as a kid, when you revisit them as adults, um, they're pretty bad. And the thing is, I still love '90s comic books. Don't get me wrong. I love that era of collecting, but it was bad. It you know like, but no, this was good. I will, like this. This is good. This is just. as good as it gets in terms of this era of comic books. So there's a lot of quality, in this in my collecting era as well. And then the Death of Superman, that's another great comic book. I don't mean it to sound like the Death of Superman's a bad comic book. No, by no means is that a bad comic book. It's kind of like peak um, 90s goodness. And there's a lot of good comic books in the 90s. I, what I mean to say is, like, when I say good comic book, it's like not just a good start to a run, but a good overall, like, arc, right? Like you have start to finish, like, goodness. And that's kind of what we lacked. You didn't have a lot of that in the 90s. So just kind of clarifying it. A lot of things start out good, but it would just get lost. And to be honest, like, I think the writers themselves are kind of figuring it out as they went along, rather than that could never happen today. Today, you have to, like, really have a kind of a finished product, like at least the story developed before you can even launch a run or series, right? And I know there are writers who do it as they go along, um, but that's always risky. That's always a risk. But the talented ones know how to do it. The ones that you know kind of figure it out as they go along and fail. Well, those are the ones that um, struggle with the art form. But again, I think today's comic books, not to say like the quality is better now than it was back then. I think in terms of my definition, like from start to finish, you have to have something coherent, something, like a start, middle, end, and some if that at the end of it, you're like, wow, that worked. That's good. That's a great story, great ending. Like if you can look at it in that context, then I think um, you ultimately have uh, a good run. And yeah, just the '90s didn't have good runs. I think today you have better runs. Um, Not to say every run is good, but at least you have like consistency, and that kind of formula is built into today's comic books. And I think that's kind of what how you see the evolution of books, because you definitely had, shorter kind of runs um, in the earlier ages, right? You might see a run go like 3 issues or something. Now you have pretty well like deep runs that where you have like smaller story arcs that build into a larger sort of overall arc. And so, yeah, in terms of, I think, the complexity of um, a serial type comic book run, it's just people have just gotten better at it, right? You've had sort of a constant situation where it's evolving, and you have sort of, I hate to say it again, but formula in place. Um, and those who know how to, like, I guess, really build within that framework are the successful ones. Absolutely. After the burst, yes. Absolutely. Yeah. See, I'm sure, it's just one of those situations you have to evolve, right? If you're really gonna, you know, I think that's a great thing about comic books. Like, you'll have a core of fans that will always just be there, you know. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not one of those fans, but I know a lot of those fans, the people that have weathered the whole storm. mean, they've been there since they first picked up a comic book, and they've been collecting or they've been buying comic books, and they've been keeping up with everything going on with these characters um, on a month to month basis. And those are the truly like those are truly the like hobby comic book warriors, right? And though that's the foundation of the industry. You lose those fans, and you don't have anything to fall back on. And unfortunately, um, you kind of lose that base of fans now. You're really losing. At least I think you're losing that the heyday, the people who developed the passion during the heyday of comic books. I'm talking about like people who have been collecting since the silver and bronze age, right? Those people are now of the age where, well, a lot of them are still collecting books, they're still passionate about books, they still got their collections, or they still buy comic books, to this day. But those collectors are becoming few and far further. Um, I'm I still consider myself a pretty decent comic book collector. But even me, I'm like, I'm 50 now, and I plan to do a lot of this in retirement. But it's like going back and getting those like back issues, the things that the older books, because I don't really outside of a few artists and stuff, I don't really there's not really a strong desire to pick up like modern books. So it really is more, and it's not even nostalgia at this point. It's more like um, appreciating the sort of like the history of the hobby, I guess you could say. Just kind of just I love the older Superman books, and the artists like the older artists from the Silver and Bronze Age. Like I'm sure I'll develop at some point a passion for other artists as well, and maybe other periods. But for now, it's like you know I've been really focused on like Neil Adams' works, and just collecting the books by my favorite artists. Um, and now I'm kind of like leaning toward um, just Silver Age, like Superman and Batman um, books. I've been kind of like thinking, like, man, it'd be nice to just really have a really good go at collecting as much Silver Age DC as because it's still relatively affordable still. Um, it's not like I can go out and buy Golden Age stuff from that period, but to be honest, like Golden Age books, they're not all that great. They're kind of lame. But man, Silver Age DC books, those are the stories. I mean, they're kind of lame now too. I mean, comparatively, but they're such a hoot. They're just like fun and funny books. Like puts a smile on your face, like when you read a good, you know, Silver Age book. I can't say that for Golden Age. Golden Age almost just feels like I don't know. Just it feels like you're reading some kind of like it's just like a lot of gangsters or the villains, or you got um the characters aren't I should say the bad guys aren't as like um relatable. I think you start getting all these like fantastical stories in the 60s and fantastical characters that are just like more fun to read, to be honest. You get um, you don't get this like crazy clown gangster versus like in the '60s. I guess Joker still is sort of a crazy clown gangster in the '60s. Just trying to think of like a good like Brainiac. Brainiac's a great example, right? You get Brainiac, this cosmic alien who you know is really smart and like you know not your run of the mill like Earth criminal character. It's just kind of like more somebody who's on par with like Superman's abilities, right? But all right, well, that's enough talking about that. We're actually heading into the second phase of this, um, and kind of segues right nicely into what we've been talking about in terms of the different ages. But we're going to cover the darlings. I'm talking about the darlings. And these are my personal darlings. They don't have to be your personal darlings because everybody has different darlings of the um, of their collecting eras. But let me kind of frame what I'm talking about. By darling, I just mean a female character who's very popular. And when I say, for example, the darling of the modern age, we're going to talk about somebody who was introduced during the modern age, early in the modern age, that has sustained her popularity to today, right? And that's really it's a hard thing to really claim. Uh, a good example would be Lady Death, right? Like now, I'm sure there's a lot of Lady Death fans out there, and I don't mean to be, Jeff, you included. I know you love Lady Death, but case in point, Lady Death, uh, introduced in the '90s. You can't really say Lady Death is popular today. I'm just sorry. yeah, she has fans, um, but she's just not popular today. They're just There's just no two ways around that. And again, it's nothing against Lady Death. If you love Lady Death, by all means, put her on your list. But I'm just talking about a character that remains kind of relevant. They're still producing like content around her consistently. Um, and so that's what I mean. A darling who was introduced in that era and remains fine. So as we go further back, we're talking about real longevity. For you to have introduced in the golden age to have survived today, you're a true darling of the comic book or pop culture, I should say, right? So we'll start with the modern age, and I really struggled with this because I was like, I want to go with my personal favorite character, but she came actually a little before the actual sort of modern age. And by modern age, I mean somebody who's introduced in the '90s. Um, so a '90s darling. And I almost went with another character because this character, and I'll just try to introduce you to her. This character is unmistakably the darling of the '90s. And that's Chun-Li. Unmistakably still relevant today, still going strong. And, I think there's more in regards to the IP than it is to this actual character. But, um, case in point, if you were to go to, let's say, Denmark, Egypt, India, China, and ask who Harley Quinn was, I would say, you know, less than 5% of people would know. Like maybe even less than that. Um, Harley Quinn is just a popular character here. Maybe within certain circles in those countries is she popular on a global scale. But if you were to ask those same people in those countries who Chun Li was, everybody would know. And that's how big this Street Fighter game what is. I mean, it's still going strong in its many iterations and the many characters that have been introduced. Um, and it's just no contest. The darling of the '90s is Chun Li. Um, just because on a global scale, everybody knows Chun Li. I don't think you can say that about any other character that's been introduced in the '90s from a female standpoint. Now, was she the most popular Street Fighter character? Probably not. I think some might point to Cammy. Cammy's a great character. Um, but yeah, I mean, but I did not choose Chun Li. I chose Harley Quinn because why? Chun Li is not a comic book character. Yeah, sure, she has a first. She's introduced in a comic book. In the comic book, she has a first appearance. It's a, I think, 1983 version of Street Fighter, um, which I actually would want to get. But yeah, I mean, she's not a darling of the comic book industry or hobby. I think her popularity just transcends comic books. It's more in the realm of video games, and of course, again, her notoriety, her popularity transcends Harley Quinn's. But this is, we're talking about darlings of the comic book eras. And in the modern age of collecting, I think you got to, in terms of someone who's maintained their popularity since their debut to today, Harley Quinn's just only grown in popularity. And this is a character that was actually introduced as an animated character, right? She was in the animated series, and then got a reverse launch in comic books, and now she's a darling of DC and a darling of the modern age. All right. Um, the darling of the Copper Age. This is, I think, this character is unmistakably the darling, but uh, darling implies like that. There's a degree of like likability. When I think darling, I'm thinking like sweetheart, right? Like, oh, she's a sweetheart. There's nothing sweet about this character, and that is Electra. She's a cold-blooded assassin. I mean, and I don't know if you can necessarily label her as darling, but she's definitely a character that was introduced, also killed, but also um, kind of lives on in the. Well, she was introduced first off. She was reintroduced, and then now she's kind of like a good, like she's Daredevil's like um, partner or sidekick, right? She's like she donned the mantle, and um, I'm not sure where her arc is going, but she's still with us today in all her little mini iterations. and yeah, she's just a great character. Um, and she's one of my personal favorites. Uh, but yeah, Daredevil's really doing well in terms of popularity right now because of the series, and I just love the Elektra from that original series. Just a really, I forget her name, but she was just this beautiful Asian actress, and really played Elektra like just lights out. She could fight. Um, just that combination of like beauty and intelligence, and again, just she was just badass in that as the the assassin of the hand. Um, and they kind of teased her comeback. So I think ultimately we will see Elektra again in this Marvel Disney Plus series of Daredevil. If I'm a betting man, I'm betting on that, and I'm hoping that the actress, they get the same original actress to play her because she was just brilliant. But I know it's not always a guarantee that that will happen. But yeah, this is just an incredible um, 8-issue limited series from Epic, more adult version of, and this is like Bill Sienkiewicz art, Frank Miller story, really an underrated book, and this is something I think, yeah, it's just a must read, and yeah, the artwork. I mean that cover right there. This is just still one. This is I think my original comic book. It is. This is a book I've had since I would say the early '90s, um, and it came out in 1986. But it's a book I've had in my collection since I read it, and it's just one of the again. Um, if you're talking like um, quality from this era, this is quality right here. The Electra Assassin. It's just Sienkiewicz and Frank Miller. I mean, what more do you have to say? Like two of the best at the time, working on really one of the best stories or characters from this period, right? Just a really complex character. It's it's a deep exploration of her, so it's really nice. All right, Darling of the '70s, and I gotta say, Jeff has influenced me on this one. That's Vampirella. Vampirella came out right in 1970 or '69, maybe. Um, but man, has she endured. She's endured, and um, she hasn't really changed all that much. There've been little things, but that she's got kids now, and so she's a mother. Uh, but in terms of her essence, like she's still sexy, right? She's still scantily clad, and she's still a vampire. So all those things ring true. And man, like I'm not a big Vampy fan. I gotta say I'm not a Vampirella fan, but Jeff has turned me on to some of the early Vampirella like cover work, and I was just like, man, those would be nice books to have just from an art standpoint. But we'll see. I'm kind of like, I feel like if I jump down that rabbit hole, I will jump in head first. So I just kind of want to like, I don't know. I just don't want to like do it quite yet. But I'm like close. I'm like, if I were to run into the book for like a really good price, I would definitely. I'm like, I almost picked up an Adam Hughes cover of Vampirella for $5. I mean, that's how close I am to just being like, all right, give me more Vampirella. I'm just kind of like on the cusp of like wanting to get stuff. But this is definitely like this Peach Momoko cover is definitely one of my favorites. It's my only Vampirella cover, um, unfortunately. But definitely, I would say Vampirella is the darling of the Bronze Age. Now, a lot of people might say, "Hey, no, wait, what are you talking about? Red Sonja is should be the darling of the Bronze Age." Um, yeah, but Red Sonja came out kind of close in the middle of the '70s versus like right at the so timing and it, the reason I didn't put my first choice for the Copper Age darling is because she kind of came at the latter part of the Copper Age, uh, and she didn't really she's more um, her character and her development was more pronounced in the '90s, even I would say even post '90s, like more of the modern books. But you all know who I'm talking about if you watched my show before. But we'll get to her in a minute. Um, the darling of the '60s is really just no contest. It's Cara Zor-El, and this is just this incredible, sexy cover by Archer in there. Had to get that. Um, now, uh, there are two characters that I like more than Supergirl, and they are Wonder Woman and Psylocke. Those are my two favorite female characters. Um, but I could see that changing soon. And what I mean by that is like for a long time, um, Superman has been my favorite character. That will never change, right? Uh, but now what we're seeing is like we're seeing Superman get his own movie, and then soon following will be Supergirl. And I think just that sort of combination, Superman, Supergirl, just being kind of the focal point of the DCU for the next couple of years, right? Um, it could really like just catapult Supergirl into my top spot. Um, and these kind of things kind of change. These positions change here and there. I don't think I'll ever stop, liking Psylocke. I'm just saying, like, it's at this point, it's like Psylocke is still on top, but I can foresee like me picking up more, wanting to pick up more Supergirl books, and as I pick up more Supergirl books, like it's just going to be like she's just going to like take over as my favorite, and yeah, it's just a different like look. It just conjures up different like emotions. Um, versus looking at Psylocke versus looking thinking about uh, Supergirl, the character, and all that. Um, they're unique in their own ways. So it's just one of those things like it's kind of like picking your favorite pet, I guess. If you have multiple pets, it's like who's your favorite pet, right? You can't rank them or pinpoint them. You just love them for different reasons. So it's just one of those things. But yeah, definitely excited for the Supergirl movie. All right. Well, we talked about um, one of my probably my second favorite, yeah, well, my second favorite character, and that is Diana Prince, Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman, man, you talk about longevity. You're talking about a character who's really kind of been there with both Superman and Batman. Um, she was introduced kind of in the early 40s, right? And has sustained her popularity and her longevity for this entire time. In fact, when DCU introduces Wonder Woman, it's going to be an event. I mean, it's going to be like, who's going to play Wonder Woman, right? Who's James Gunn going to get to play her? Um, and man, talk and another thing to add to the character, like her look has really not changed all that much. Um, well, actually, maybe I should take that back. I think the modern iterations of her have her like looking more, like warrior like, right? They've given her armor, they've given her kind of like a more Roman esque look versus like the stars in the eagle bustier, the star panties and the eagle bustier. Um, it's kind of like her character has evolved too. So I don't want to say like, but I just like for me this is Wonder Woman's look. They got to bring some version of the star panties into her. It's kind of like Superman. Like you have to have Superman in undies. You have to have Wonder Woman in the star panties, and that's just it. I mean, like you don't have those two things. You're failing at your job as a character designer for movies or whatnot. Um, so yeah, James Gunn, if you're watching, and I know you are, keep the star panties, man, on Wonder Woman. Don't do anything with the star panties, please. Um, all right. Well, we went over the darlings, and then I'm going to end with. I already kind of showed it off, but I'm going to end with the amalgam. I like to say the amalgam. Um, we want to talk about. Actually, it's not even an amalgam. It's literally. Um, I guess it would be an amalgam. Let's amalgam. You know, if you were to amalgam Elektra and Wonder Woman, right? That would be Psylocke. Psylocke is essentially Elektra. I mean, there's not much separating the design of the two characters. Um, you know, other than she's wearing this like head scarf, and Psylocke isn't, and then she's in red, and Psylocke's in this like navy blue. And I think, yeah, Natasha has like curly hair versus this like more straight hair. Um, but in terms of the look, I think they're very similar. And again, that's my choice. Psylocke is the darling of my comic book, you know, uh, my comic book era. And we'll end there. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with me tonight. And especially to you, Tyler. Thanks for staying on as long as you could. And, I got a late start. So, Miss O, if you're watching this on the rewind, yeah, sorry to keep you waiting. I did try to. I wanted to like get on right on time, just because I knew you're probably checking in. And my apologies. I just had to get all these books ready, and like I got a late start on dinner and all that stuff. So just kind of things took their toll. But I'll try to start right on time next time. But Yeah, it was fun kind of talking all through all this stuff, and hope you guys are just having a great spring. I know there's a lot going on right now, a lot of sort of anxiety and uncertainty in our lives that we don't need. But you know, lean on, mm, lean on just the people around you, and lean on each other, and we'll get through this. You know, I mean, you know, outside of like some kind of cosmic event that destroys Earth or annihilates the population, um, I think even with all the terrible things going on, humanity will survive. So at least I hope it does. So thanks for hanging out for a little bit, and we'll see you in the next one. Uh, Otaku Weekly next week. Join me and Jeff for Double Tiger tomorrow too. So, oh, and a shout out special. I forgot the most important thing. A special shout out to Metarog, Roger. He has finished working on my books, and he sent them out earlier today. So I should have those books sometime next week. And Roger and I are going to jump on live when I get them. Going to unbox them, and we're going to go over um, the results and his process, and just cover all that. And I'm just so excited to do that with him. Um, and I just thank him for all his hard efforts, because these were not easy books to work on by no means. Each one had just a bevy of issues. But for him to you know, take the time to address every little single thing, that the book where the book had been improved, is just says a lot about his character. And um, I'm just so appreciative of him, thankful for just his uh, mentorship in this hobby. Because, man, if you want to talk about a comic book collection, or just comic book knowledge, or just somebody who I was saying earlier, like, who's weathered the storm and just has been there. He's been a comic book collector his entire, life, from when he first picked up a comic book to even today. I mean, he is the embodiment of this hobby, and I love this hobby. Um, but there are limitations to like what I can do. Uh, I've left the hobby. I've come back. Even to this day, I can't bring myself to um, you know spend or increase my collection beyond a certain point. Um, but it's fun to watch people who are just savvy collectors and have done it for this entire time. They're just really like an inspiration, because they're showing you how to do it. They're showing you how to do it responsibly. They're showing you how to have fun with it, how to enjoy your collection, how to just um, maintain that level of exuberance that comic books bring. And I am trying to channel that, because lately I've just been kind of like, where's all this? Where am I going with this? What is my end game and all that? But you don't have to have an end game. All you have to do is just like enjoy reading comic books, enjoy the history of comic books, enjoy, um, you know, the characters and the stories and the things that, uh, the things that are brought to light when you engage in comic books, and that's really where the joy is. Don't get caught up in like grading and like the flavor of the month type books and all that. Um, just jump in, read a book, and hopefully that'll just spark enough interest and passion into getting more and building your collection and doing stuff like that. So, like again, it's good to have mentors or people you kind of look up to, like whose collections you look up to, whose knowledge you look up to, um, and just people who have a real keen appreciation for this hobby. Um, it's always uh, it's always nice to see. It's always nice to see. Um, there are people out there that are in it to, I guess, influence people or sell books, or not to say everybody who sells is, you know, not a good person. I'm just saying, like, oftentimes people who like are in it for the business are, they don't have that passion. But there are some sellers who are true collectors, right? They like collect and they get into the business because they love collecting, and they're not it doesn't really change them. They're just now collectors who also sell books. There's a lot of people like that. And I'm not those are actually pretty cool people. But there's a lot of people who are just selling books to be selling books too. And I think um, you got to kind of discern between the two, because one's definitely better than the other. I mean, I'm talking like if you're a collector and you're selling books and you have a real passion for it, that's somebody I would, want to, you know, somebody I'd want to buy books from, somebody would want to, somebody who knows the hobby, who can talk our language. And then there are the people like, they're just out to like flip a book or just sell a book. They don't know much about the hobby. There are a lot of people like that too, just shady kind of people, um, they're the same kind of people who like, it's more about the sale than it is about the hobby. It's more about, you know, oh, did this book go up in price? Well, I'm going to change the price on you then. It's kind of like, those kinds of people. So just thankful, this community has really passionate people about the hobby. Those are the people you want to connect with, right? Versus people who are just out there to grow their channel and you know make a buck and sell a book and all that stuff. So if you're trying to profit off the community, it's not cool. All right, man. Well, good night, Tyler. Thanks for joining, man. And yeah, uh, everybody else, we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.